Hello and welcome to the channel, and welcome to the beautiful country of Finland. I've been here for about 2 weeks now, trying to record the sounds of nature and wildlife, and it's been quite the journey. Yeah, it's the end of the road here. It might not look like much, but this is where the road ends. Behind you, over there, is Russia. It's no more than a couple of miles away. There's an exclusion zone beyond those yellow markers over there, and then it's Russia. It's Siberia, the taiga, the tundra. Anyway, I'm here today to talk to you about recording wildlife in extreme conditions, specifically in extreme cold conditions. Right now it's actually pretty warm. My watch tells me it is minus 12 degrees Celsius. I don't know what that is in Fahrenheit units, but it's been as low as minus 26 on this trip. And of course, it can go down to minus 35 here easily. So it's not the easiest environment to record in, but it can be very productive. Why would you want to record in extreme cold, you may ask? Well, maybe there's something here that there isn't anywhere else. Or maybe the conditions here, oh, look at that. The conditions here are perfect for certain things or certain species. We'll get to that, but before we can even talk about sound recording, we need to talk about what I'm doing right now, which is layering up clothing. If you want to do anything in this kind of environment, you have to be very clever about the clothing you wear. I grew up in a similar environment back in Romania, 20, 30 years ago. It was pretty cold. Minus 30 wasn't unheard of, so layering up was key. That's without a question. If you don't layer up properly, you're going to suffer. And then of course you have to think about what you layer up with. You could layer up with synthetic fiber, which is very bad at keeping the cold away. So that's not a good idea. Back 30 years ago, my grandma would knit woolen sweaters and woolen socks and all kinds of other garments like that, and they were brilliant. They were very good in the cold. And my grandpa, who was a sheep herder, he used to wear a massive, what would you call that? A jacket? That's a bit of a stretch because it was just a amorphous blob of sheepskins. Just 3 sheepskins sewn together. He would wear that on his back, and that kept the blizzard away and the cold away. And if a wolf attacked him, he couldn't get to him because that thing was virtually bite-proof and cut-proof. Nowadays we have better options. Nowadays we have merino base layers, which are brilliant. I'm wearing some right now. This is merino gloves. Unfortunately, working with XLR ports, inevitably these break. But this way I can actually use my devices, which is pretty good. It doesn't keep the cold away. So I have these thicker, I think this is man-made fiber though. Yeah, it's a fleece. Thicker glove, mitten type glove. Just go to your local shop that sells outdoors equipment and you'll find plenty. This is not the main meat and potatoes of this video, so I'm going to move on to the next topic. I hinted at it briefly, but location is quite important. Plenty of locations in the Western world, in the so-called developed world, in Western Europe, in North America, places like that, Australia, they're very noisy. If you want to record any kind of subtle nature sound, you're going to have to compete with the sounds of distant engines, aircraft, people, industry. It's a noisy environment out there. I've tried to record foxes where I live in Brighton in the UK, and I just gave up after a couple of nights because even though the foxes were pretty loud, the background din of the city was too much. So choosing your location is pretty important. I chose this place because I was already coming to Finland to work on a different project. And once that project was done last week, I thought about spending an extra week around here trying to record ravens. I know any kind of environment like this, tundra, taiga, boreal forest is very good for recording ravens. Ravens love these kind of environments. They sometimes even associate with wolf packs so that they can get the scraps from the wolf kills. There's also the geopolitical aspect whereby this area is very sensitive. So there's no flights allowed, no drones, There's very little traffic because, as I said at the beginning of this video, this is the end of the road. Literally, beyond there's no more driving. It's a bog and a swamp. They're all frozen, but I don't think you want to venture out there in a car. So the sounds of traffic are minimized. Even if there is traffic, it's going to be me driving around in my little car, or maybe some of the local guides. It's pretty good as far as locations go, especially in Western Europe or in Northern Europe. It's perfect for recording nature sounds. And then you have to think about the time of the year as well. It's winter now. It's very cold. Songbirds, they will try to expend as little energy as possible. So they just fly around feeding all day, trying to survive, and they don't sing because that takes energy. That uses up quite a bit of energy. And they don't need to have any territories right now because they're not mating. Come spring, April, May, June, that's going to be very different. There's going to be lots of birdsong around here, but right now there's almost nothing. So you have to think about that as well when you take into account location. Some parts of the world might be much noisier during certain times of the year. Okay, so now that you've figured out your location, your clothing, your time of the year, everything's okay, everything's perfect, you come here, what do? Are you going to hike? You can access a lot of locations on foot from the cottage I'm staying at. It's not the perfect plan though, because it takes a long time to hike in deep snow. Even if you have access, then let's say you can take the road, you can walk on the road, it's very slow progress. And if you're after a species like the wolf, for example, the wolves, they cover hundreds of square miles, so they will be very difficult to spot. You're going to need to be in a car. They've got a car here at the lodge. You can also get your own. Just think about driving in winter because it's very different from driving in spring. Think about tires, think about all-wheel drive, think about your skills as a driver. There are a few other considerations to take into account. Again, this is not the video for that, so I'm going to leave it there. For access, even if you drive, you might reach the end of the road. From then on, it's on foot, and then you might need skis or snowshoes or some other form of walking aid. Take that into account. Make sure the places you're going to have this kind of equipment, or make sure you bring it with you, because otherwise it's going to be very difficult. And one last aspect, if you can see here, I'm wearing snow gaiters. Snow gaiters sound like a luxury or like something that just adds to the comfort, but if you're walking all day in the snow, you're going to end up with a lot of snow in your shoes, and that's going to melt and then freeze, and you're going to end up with really, really bad cold feet, maybe frostbite, frost nip, that kind of stuff. You don't want that. So make sure you bring either long boots or snow gaiters. And another thing that just came to mind, if you're walking on pretty unstable ground or on the ice, you're going to have to bring crampons. I don't have any with me. Actually, I do have some with me, but I don't know where I put them. I'm not going to show them to you now. Ice crampons, very good, worth the price. I had some in Romania on my recent trip, and I lent them to Sten because he was struggling a little bit, and he was very thankful because that made it much easier for him to walk around. Okay, so now we've discussed all of these adjacent aspects. Let's talk about species. The main reason I'm here is to record the sounds of ravens, because this is a good place for them. There's also a handful of other birds that are vocal this time of the year. There's also wolves and wolverines here, but unfortunately they're not very vocal because there's hunting in Finland. I think Finnish hunters took a break for 4 or 5 years, and then this year they resumed their hunting. We're not going to go into that right now. I'm very much against hunting for sport. I don't think there's an imbalance, or if there is one, I think there's not enough predators in Europe because of overhunting and habitat encroachment and human-wildlife conflict. I don't think we should be hunting wolves or bears or wolverines or eagles or whatever. But unfortunately, that also means that the wolves here have had to adapt, so they're not very vocal. They know that if the hunters hear them, they're going to find them more easily. So there's loads of tracks of wolf around here. I've seen them, fresh ones, this morning, but unfortunately, I've not recorded any howls, and I've not heard any howls. And the people living here, the guides and the owners, they've not heard the wolves howl in a long time. They do that at the height of their mating season, which has just ended. I managed to record wolves in Romania in a pretty similar location where there is hunting as well. It's a game of chance. There's a lot of luck involved and there's a lot of perseverance required. You have to be here for months in January, February, beginning of March, while they're mating. Try and record as much as possible in as many places as possible so that you're going to capture, hopefully, 1 or 2 hulls. I've not been able to do that. I've only got 2 more days here. I don't expect to be able to record that. But all of this is to say, you need to understand the animal's behavior. Think about what your target species is and try and understand and learn about it as much as possible. For ravens, even though they're some of the most intelligent birds, they're not that complicated. I've seen them and I've interacted with them and I've read about them and I've recorded them in the past many times. So I know more or less what to expect. I know they're very vocal. I know they usually fly around in pairs and they like to keep in contact with each other. I've had to walk around here in the biting cold looking for the ravens. They're also a bit skittish here for some reason. I don't think they've been hunted. I know in other places people have some weird associations. They think ravens are the harbingers of death and stuff like that. So they may have persecuted them. But even so, even if they're not hunted here, it's difficult to get to approach them. I've tried to be as inconspicuous as possible, to walk slowly and quietly. And I've noticed they keep landing on a few trees. So I've set up some mics over there. I got a decent amount of good calls so far. Not enough, so I'm still trying. I've got 4 or 5 rigs out right now. Hopefully I'm going to capture some good amount of calls. But yeah, going back to my list of topics. Animal behavior. If you're trying to record some species, you need to understand that species. If you don't understand it, you're going to be going around in the dark and not making much progress, or everything's going to be down to luck. You don't want that. You want to be sure that you're going to record something. Even, it's nature, it's wildlife. It's never guaranteed, but if you learn about it, you're going to have much higher chances of getting it done. All right, I am freezing my butt off and my toes off and my nose off. But before I talk about equipment, I'm going to talk about ways of recording. So you can do 2 things. You can record passively or you can record actively. Active recording is very easy to picture, to understand. You just grab a recording rig, you walk around, point a microphone at something and try to record it. It is not the easiest way to record because it's very noisy walking here. The snow is very dry, so it makes a lot of screechy, squeaky sounds. If you're planning to sneak up on any animal, they're going to hear you from hundreds of meters away. And also, it's pretty cold. As I said earlier, it's been minus 26, so I wouldn't want to spend too much time out there with a microphone in my hand. It is sometimes the only way. I've done it on this trip, and I'm going to have to do it again probably tomorrow or the day after. But if I have a choice, I'd go for the passive way of recording. That switches things around, that puts all the work in learning the animal's behavior, identifying the good location for sound recording, and then letting wildlife and nature do its work. I talk about this in other of my videos, you can look them up. But basically, passive sound recording saves you a lot of time, saves you a lot of effort, a lot of pain as well. And you can also get a lot more work done. The downside of it is you may end up not knowing what you've captured. It takes a while to identify species in your recordings, but to me that's the interesting part. I have tried to record actively on this trip, failed at it, as I said, because of how squeaky the snow is. But I'm going to show you how I set up a rig to record passively. And for that, we're going to need to go for a walk. I think this is a good enough location. Okay, here we are. This is a good place. I've seen the ravens flying up around here. I've seen them make a lot of noise. I've heard them. There's some woodpecker as well. I could just hear it right now as I was coming here. So, I've got my kit here. I need to clear some space around here. And then I'm going to set up my drop rig. What do we need for a drop rig? We can start with a tripod because otherwise I'm going to get snow into the connector. Tripod. These are not the best. They're the ones I have, therefore I'm going to use them. But these segments, they seize up in really cold weather or humidity, and then sometimes they stop being very flexible, sometimes they break off. For now, this one's still doing well. That's the tripod. It's the Joby Gorilla Pod something or other. And I've got the Rycode PCS L. It's a quick release system that I've got on all my blimps. It's pretty useful. It saves me, a few seconds every time I have to set up a rig. Here I have the Radius Mini Alto 250. Good for wind protection, good for shock protection. Now this quick release system here, very neat. I'm done. I don't have to screw it in or out. Inside there is the Sennheiser MKH8018 microphone. Sennheiser sent me one to test it and I never sent it back because I like it so much. I've got some amazing recordings with it. It's better than the 8060 in that it records stereo. Stereo is not necessary for spot effects and for wildlife sound, but it's a nice extra element to have. I've got a dry bag in my backpack, so backpack, I can throw this away for now. I'm gonna throw it away out of the frame. Dry bag is the Sea2 Summit Big River 8 liter. It's my favorite dry bag. There are others out there, but this canvas is pretty nice. It's more resistant to rodents and monkeys and stuff. Not completely monkey proof or rodent proof, but better than thinner ones and doesn't weigh much more. I've got this cable that was made for me. I don't remember who made it for me. So this is a 5-pin XLR to 2 3-pin XLRs. I need this for getting the signal from the 2 capsules on the MKH8018. Come on, there we go. I've connected the cable to the blimp. I'm very careful when I work in the snow or sand or even humidity to not get humidity or water or sand or anything in the connectors because that can cause a lot of trouble. In terms of recorders, I'm using the Zoom F3 because I have to, not because I choose, because my Zoom F6, which I was originally going to use, is acting up. 2 of its channels, they're adding some noise, random bursts of noise. I'm not sure whether it's from the cables that I'm using with them or humidity in the inputs or whatever, but I need to investigate that and I don't have time. So for now, I'm going to use the F3, which has worked well so far on this trip. It works well in general. It uses more power because it's 32-bit. You can't choose to work in 24-bit with it. I don't like the fact that it splits everything into 2 GB chunks rather than 4 GB chunks. But apart from that, it's pretty good and very compact. So my toes are getting a bit numb now. I've been recording this video for more than half an hour and I can start feeling it. I've got really good thick wool socks on, but it doesn't make any difference. I think it's -15 now. So I need to move a little bit. I need to format the SD card. Always, before you start a recording, format the SD card, unless you have some stuff on it that you want to keep. It's just safer that way. Execute. I didn't talk about the battery. This battery is a very old, I don't even know what brand it is anymore. It's a RAV Power 26,800 milliamp hour battery. I keep using it because it doesn't shut off in the cold. Some other batteries will do that. The newer ones, the Anker ones, which Anker I like as a brand, but they're new ones. They just shut off in the cold. They don't take power in the cold. That causes problems for me because I work in the cold. And this one has never caused me any problems. It's always worked. Okay, press record. Cable itself is pretty important as well. This one is the Anker Powerline 3. I've used other cables before and I've had issues with them. USB-C cables or USB cables in general. They're not all rated for the same amount of power, same amount of data throughput. This one's good for power. This one doesn't create a bottleneck. This one doesn't cause any problems. Press record on this. I'm gonna put it in the dry bag. But I'm not putting it away just yet. I want to check it in a few minutes because it might stop working. Okay, I need to move my feet a little bit. Before we wrap up, I need to tell you that all these pieces of equipment, I've tested them thoroughly in a lot of different environments. Okay, so it looks like we've waited here enough for the ravens to show up. think they do that in the evening. Yeah, it's 4:06. They start hanging out here in the evening. As I was saying, yeah, if I'm working on something critical where I can't afford to fail, I usually just bring stuff that I've worked with in the past because I know it's going to work. Sometimes I test new things, and if they are good, I want to bring them into my kit. If they're not good enough, I'm going to drop them. So one way to tell if a piece of kit is good enough, just look at what I'm sharing on social media. That is to say, you can use a different microphone. You can use the Sennheiser MKH8060. You can use the Rycote microphones as well, the HC22, if I recall. That's pretty good. I just use this one because of everything I've tried. It sounds the best, and it offers me peace of mind in extreme environments. I'm sure there's other equipment out there that's going to do the same thing. Same goes for the blimp. I've got some Rycote blimps, some of the old ones, the WS whatever, 10, whatever it's called, that work really well. They're pretty sturdy, they're nice. I've got the new Nano Shields as well, which are much lighter, a bit less sturdy, but there's always that compromise you have to make. Other blimps I've tried, the Sinella ones. Sinella is a bit more bulky, but they come with a neat carry case, and then they are slightly better at wind protection, just slightly. Rode, I don't like so much. They are too heavy for me. They block out too much of the mid and high frequencies. I remember I did a test 12 years ago. I was not very happy with them. If we talk about recorders, I mentioned the Zoom F6 before. I've got a couple of those. They're okay. They're not the best. They do allow you to record in 24-bit, which the F3 does not, and therefore uses less power. I think the biggest advantage of the F6 is that it's very power efficient. Much more power efficient than the Sound Devices MixPre 6.2, which I often compare it with. I've got the MixPre 6.2 with me as well. I'm going to set it up with a quad setup soon. But that one, the MixPre, uses more than twice the power. So it goes through one of these big batteries twice as fast. Again, compromise. As I said earlier, you have to think about what's more important. For me, in this kind of situation, it's more important to have longer lasting battery. The audio quality is slightly better on the MixPre 6.2, not by much, so I'm not going to bother. In this case, the F3 is good enough. For dry bags, you can use others. You can use EchoQuest and whatever. For tripods, you can use others. There's no perfect recipe. You don't just pick up a list of things and then you're going to be good. It takes a bit of trial and error. It takes a bit of experimenting, whatever works for you. And it also takes a bit of testing kit in these conditions. In a nutshell, that is how to record wildlife in extreme cold. This thing is still recording. Always good news. Some people prefer to use something called a hand warmer. I'm a bit reluctant to put that thing that gets really hot next to the battery, next to the power bank, because that's how you can make it explode. So I'm not going to do that right now. I think if it was colder, maybe minus 20 or below, I would have probably tried to use that. For now, I think it's enough to put the dry bag here. I want to cover it with snow, because the snow, believe it or not, is a very good thermal insulator. So it's going to keep that slightly warmer or slightly less cold than the environment. I'm going to make some room for the sound to reach the microphones. I'm hoping the wolves or the wolverines are not going to find this very interesting. But basically, that little gap up there, let me line it up properly. That is what I'm aiming for. That's where I've seen the ravens fly by. And I've seen them hanging out in that tree. So we are in business. This is recording wildlife in extreme environments. Between all the rigs I set up on that day, I captured some amazing raven sounds. Many thanks to Radius Windshields for sponsoring this video and for supporting my work. Check out their range of windshields and accessories at radiuswindshields.com. And now stick around to listen to some of my raven recordings from that day.